Hello, everybody. Welcome to class 13. Today we're going to be talking about eating disorders. The first eating disorder that we're going to be covering today is anorexia nervosa. Okay, so big question. What is it? People with this condition generally think of themselves as being overweight. Basically, this is a distorted body image, which causes them to try to go underweight and try to make themselves thinner. This mainly causes people to monitor their weight heavily, avoid eating food types such as like fatty food types, and try to really restrict the amount of calories of which they intake. And this is usually influenced by modern media with the influence of how supermodels and models appearing in the news, on magazines, and on the internet, showing how this is the specific body type of which people are to be taking. Then these people will then see these body types and say, this is how it's supposed to be, but I am not this sort of body type, causing this sort of eating disorder. And with this causation of this eating disorder from modern media, it causes them to then take a look at themselves, take a look on what they're seeing from other people, and assume that they have to change and fit with the societal standards of which are being presented to them, causing them to, as I aforementioned, it causes them to basically start making themselves thinner and thinner, hurting themselves more and more, and can even cause organ failure and death in some cases. Next slide. Thank you. So, common symptoms. As I've already mentioned, common symptoms usually result in people being vastly underweight compared to other people of their same age and or height. And this also, as I've already said about, this is caused because of their really restricted eating pattern. So, for example, they would normally avoid foods, fatty foods, or other high calorie foods because they want to maintain their ideal body weight of which they have seen in the media and in the news. And because of, as I've mentioned, the ideal body weight or the ideal body structure, it causes an intense fear of gaining weight or persistent behaviors to avoid gaining weight despite being underweight. So, for example, they would, to get their ideal body structure, they might, they might then, for example, start eating less. And if they start eating less, what will happen is they're basically starving themselves of their calories. Basically, they're killing themselves by not eating enough. And of course, if you're not eating enough, you're going to get thinner, which is what they're trying to make. So this repeats in a perpetual cycle of them thinking to themselves, I'm not thin enough, them not eating enough, them getting thinner, and them slowly killing themselves because of that perpetual cycle of thoughts and ideas of how they're not perfect enough. They're not looking like the people in the magazines of which they're reading every day. And another symptom is, please go back. Another symptoms is the relentless pursuit, the thinness and unwillingness to maintain a healthy weight. Basically, because of the media of which has influenced them, and they basically, whenever they see their weight, or at least the average weight, they don't see it as what's supposed to be the average weight. They instead take a look at what they are weighing and they disregard it due to other factors, as I mentioned. Next symptom, a heavy influence of body weight or perceived body shape on self-esteem. Basically, this is what I've already covered. Because of them not looking like what the media portrays people to be good looking as, if they don't look this way, it negatively affects their self-esteem because they think that they aren't beautiful, they aren't pretty, they aren't uh, they aren't good looking. They basically, because of the perceived images of which have been enforced into their minds, because they are not like that, they then take it upon themselves and think that they are the ugly ones in society. And of course, finally, a distorted body image, including denial of about being seriously underweight. Of course, this is mainly because of the aforementioned things of which I have talked about, how distorted body image caused by media, magazines, all that sort of stuff, and denial about being seriously underweight is because mainly they just want to keep how they're doing. Now, before we move on to the next slide, there are actually two types of this sort of condition. There is the one of which I've already mentioned, the one about just basically starving themselves, and there is actually a second. I will briefly touch on that. The second one is binge eating and then starving yourself. So instead of just slowly starving yourself, they are instead eating a bunch and then they stop eating because they are getting fatter. So let's just take this. Let's put in, it's more like a cycle. So they would eat a lot. So let's say they binge first, okay? They start binging first. They eat a lot and then they get overweight or they gain weight. What would then happen is then they starve themselves so that they lose all that weight of which they gain. However, because of them losing all that weight, and they become hungry again. And so then the cycle continues, of which they binge again, and then they start doing the same thing of just starving and starving themselves over and over and over into a cycle. Now, we can move on to the next disorder, of which I believe Carrie will cover.
So the next disorder, eating disorder I'm going to talk about is binge eating disorder. So what is it? The binge eating disorder is a constant eating of like large quantities of food until you're uncomfortably full, even when you're not hungry. Like maybe after dinner, you ate like a buffet and you're full to the max. You might go home after like 30 minutes. You might still continue eating until you're just not comfortable. Um, this also includes uncontrollable eating. Uh, they can't stop themselves during like when they want to eat, when they feel the urge to eat. They can't stop themselves from like buying snacks and eating the snacks. Um, so the people who have this disorder, they don't take much of like they don't take the calorie factor into when they eat. So because of that, they don't take much of a countermeasures to counteract the calories that they eat. Some of these countermeasures may include purging, which is forceful vomiting, which to like throw up all the calories and food that they have eaten, which they usually don't do when with this disorder. So afterwards, after they have eaten or finished their eating session, they usually have feelings of guilt, along with like dissatisfaction of their body. Even then, they don't stop, and because it's not because they don't want to. It's because it's really hard to get over this disorder, even with therapy and help. Uh, and this is one of the most common eating disorder in the U.S. So, what are the causes of this disorder? Um, the causes are unclear. It's usually with very deep psychological problems, but um, some causes that we know of are weight obsession, low self-esteem with like body dissatisfaction. As mentioned in the previous disorder, maybe the models in the magazines, social media have a direct effect on how we look at our bodies, and that may lead to why we binge eat. It can also be because of depression as a side effect. Um, we sometimes we eat comfort foods to compensate and make us feel better. There's some ingredients and stuff that the manufacturers and food companies put into like chips, chocolate, that help you feel better, release more dopamine, which is the good feeling that you get when you do something good. Um, it can also be caused by traumatic events, which can also trigger this disorder too. So, what are the effects on the body? Uh, the binge eating disorder usually causes obesity and overweight, obviously because you're eating so much food in small amounts of time that your body cannot fully digest and use those calories in the good amount of time. So the body stores the extra calories as fat, so which leads to overweight and yeah. It also increased the chances of heart attack, stroke, and type 2 diabetes. Since, as I said before, you're just taking in too many nutrients and your body can't handle all of it at once in such a short time.
Bulimia. What is bulimia? Bulimia is an emotional disorder involving distortion of body image and an obsessive desire to lose weight, in which bouts of extreme overeating are followed by depression and self-induced vomiting, purging, or fasting. In other words, people binge eat and get rid of it in harmful ways like vomiting or fasting. Bulimia treatments. You can go to a therapist, medication, self-care. Like most things, this doesn't have a perfect treatment, but this we can help stop this eating disorder.
Go. Pico. Pica symptoms and how it is treated. Symptoms. Eating items that aren't considered food. People with pica want to consume non-food items such as chalk, dirt, ice, paper, and clay. Some people with pica like the taste and texture of non-food items. Treatment. Tell your doctor what you have been eating so they can provide you the correct medication. If your pica is caused by nutrition deficiencies, your doctor might prescribe vitamins or mineral supplements. If pica is caused by mental disorders, your doctor might prescribe some behavior management medication. Causes. Sometimes it's a deficiency in nutrients such as iron and zinc, or over time it's a way of coping with mental disorders such as OCD. Dieting and malnourishment can also lead to pica. What pica can lead to. Eating some non-food substances can cause other serious health issues. These issues can include poisoning such as lead poisoning, parasitic infections, and intestinal blockages.